Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Beat, a news and informative talk program brought to you by the Center for Community Media here at Worcester State. I'm RJ Sheedy, and today we'll be taking a look at ballot question number 2. Question 2, if passed, would allow the states to approve 12 new charter schools per year. Joining me on set to talk about why we should vote yes is Shane Dunn, the Coalition Director for the Great Schools Massachusetts Yes On To campaign. Shane, it is so great to have you here on set with us.
Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me, RJ.
I'm so happy you're here. So explain to me what question 2 is and exactly why voters should vote yes on it.
Sure. So again, thank you for having me here today. So question 2 would provide families across Massachusetts, specifically those in low-performing public school districts, choice in their child's education. So currently we have, Massachusetts does have the best public schools in America. I think we're all very proud to say that. However, there are significant achievement gaps that still exist between kids of color and their white peers, as well as a significant gap in achievement in public schools based on socioeconomic background. Public charter schools in this state, including some of our urban centers, are seeing phenomenal academic progress for those same students. And so in question 2, we are asking the voters to pass an initiative that would allow up to 12 new charter schools. Again, it's up to 12 new charter schools per year, or expansions on existing charter schools to provide more families with access to better public schools if they so choose. And so I'm here today, obviously, to advocate for the Yes on 2 position because I firmly believe that we can't wait any longer. For generations, there have been students who have been sitting in schools that have not served their needs well, that they have underperformed to their potential, and that is just unacceptable to me, and I think it's unacceptable to most voters in this Commonwealth and across the country. And so, again, we need to continue to push forward across all parts of public education in the Commonwealth, but I believe charter schools have done a phenomenal job and are more than just an experiment anymore. They are a true part of the toolkit of public education here in the Commonwealth. So we should not be slowing down growth. We should provide for a increase in the number of charter seats in the Commonwealth while paying attention to see what works so that we are sharing it more broadly.
So the 12 new charter schools, where do you see these going? Like what communities are they going to be helping and what kind of kids are they going to be educating?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So most charter schools across the Commonwealth today, and there are 78 charter schools across Massachusetts, 69 of those are what we call Commonwealth charter schools that are completely autonomous public schools that operate independent of the school district. The other 9 are what we call Horace Mann in-district charter schools. Most of those charter schools are in urban centers, so Boston, Worcester, Fall River, Springfield, Holyoke, with a small group of charter schools in a couple of more rural or suburban communities. There has not been a charter school opened outside of an urban center in over 10 years. And before that, it was only a few before that. So charter schools are localized primarily in urban centers. I expect the same thing to happen again if question 2 passes. Question 2 allows those up to 12 new charter schools per year or expansions to be focused in on the bottom 25% of performing districts based on academic performance on tests and whatnot as determined by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So this will not affect high-performing districts, of which there are thankfully many in the Commonwealth. This will really look at this will really give preference to 9 communities across the state that, again, may have underperforming public school districts, and yet we are seeing significant demand from families to get into their local charter school. And so that's exactly what will happen here. This gives preference. The department will give preference to those communities specifically.
So I assume you're out there every day meeting voters of all kinds. When you interact with families who really need a charter school for their kid, what is their reactions to you like?
Yeah,
what do they say to you?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there are, the families who are sitting on charter school waiting lists, of which, there are 32,000 children across the state on waiting lists, including over 1,000 right here in Worcester, almost 12,000 in Boston alone, 5,000 in Springfield. They, as I said earlier, if they're parents, they know their child only has one shot at getting a good quality education. And many of these people, charter schools currently tend to serve low-income families who unfortunately do not have the means to send their kids to private school and pay a tuition bill every year, nor do they necessarily have the means to move out to a wealthier suburb or more expensive suburb to send their kids to a local district school that is quite strong. But of course, they're paying it through the housing market or through their taxes. And so, before joining this campaign, I have worked at one of the best charter schools in the state for 3 years. And so I worked closely with families, and I helped. I worked with families who were stuck on those waiting lists. And one of the worst days of your career when you work in a charter school happens to be lottery day. It's one of the happiest as well as one of the saddest, because you have families who are crying for two different reasons. Some are crying because they got in to the charter school through the lottery and they have a new seat that they are excited will hopefully change their kids' trajectory. And then you've got the people crying because they didn't get in and they know that unfortunately they may be going back to a school that is not providing them the education that they want or deserve. And so I'm hearing this across the state, as are my colleagues. This movement, this initiative is based on the parent voice. We're here because these parents, unfortunately, have not had a voice for a very long time. And importantly, like I said earlier, they can't wait any longer. They can't wait 5 years after the kids left 5th grade to go and repeat 5th grade. They only get one shot, and they need to be prepared for the future just as well as any wealthy kid does who has, thankfully, access to a good school as well as to resources outside of school. And charters are providing that promise for most of these families.
Okay, so it sounds like we already have charter schools, and two, they're already proving to be successful where they need to be. However, running schools are not cheap. Reportedly, $400 million gets taken from public schools already to run charter schools. Why don't we just fix public schools rather than creating new schools? Why do we need charter schools?
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. So important point to note is for all viewers to remember is charter schools themselves are public schools. Money in Massachusetts, the public monies follow children to different public schools. So when a student chooses to leave a local public district school, the money that the state allocates to that child follows them to pay for their education at the charter school. And in Massachusetts, 4% of public school students attend charter schools, and they're very important and well-regarded independent research reports. Massachusetts Taxpayers Foundation, which has been confirmed by the Boston Globe and other publications, show that 4% of public education dollars follow kids to charter schools. And so charters are not, taking any more money than the students that they are educating, many ways operating on a lower per pupil dollar than the local district schools. And so the $450 million number is the No On To campaign, our opposition's attempt at instilling fear on voters across the Commonwealth to say, one, they're saying very clearly that charters are not public schools when they are, because they're automatically assuming that money, that aggregate $450 million that allows charters to operate and educate their students belongs to the district or the city or to adults, when we very firmly believe that money in Massachusetts for education, if it's public money, belongs to the student. And so that's number one. Importantly, in Massachusetts, we also reimburse district schools when a child decides, or parent decides to move their child to a charter school after they get in. The state, through we call Chapter 46 reimbursement, reimburses the local district school for 6 years after the child leaves. So the state is providing funds to allow for some adjustment period, knowing it can be hard to adjust to losing a number of students when you have overhead costs and other fixed costs. So state is helping to mitigate that while the district decides how it can best right size based on its existing and new enrollment. And so I think that is very generous because, again, we are still providing that money necessary to support the child in the existing school they go to, which is the charter school, while also recognizing the reality of it is hard to right size a big district potentially. So we are putting more money into that. So I think, there's a lot of money out there for public schools. Can we always argue for more? Absolutely. I think education is the best investment we can make in any part of our economy or any public sector. However, I think we in Massachusetts do it quite well, and we have a lot of money in the system. I think we need to just make sure it's going in the right places. And importantly, that if we have a lot of money in the system, we need to make sure we have outcomes. And importantly, charter schools with the same representative student body as the sending districts are seeing phenomenal outcomes, especially in Boston.
Why do you think charter schools are having such better outcomes versus a traditional public school? Because the data's there. It's a fact.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, I think you're right. It is a fact. I mean, you've got really credible studies from Stanford, MIT, Harvard, the Brookings Institution, saying that charters are just getting phenomenal levels of achievement and accomplishment from their students. In the orders of over 100 to 200 extra school days per year of learning, and that translates into great outcomes on exams as well as SATs and college acceptance and graduation. I think there's a couple parts of the charter mission that work really well. The first is complete flexibility and autonomy. So the Commonwealth charter schools I was talking about earlier are public schools, but they operate independent of the local school district. They have boards of directors, and then they have a management team that operate as a nonprofit, and they have complete control over how their money is spent, how those public dollars are spent in their schools and in their organization, which again gives complete flexibility as to where the money needs to go, and to students importantly. Charter schools importantly have a lot of control over how do they meet the curricular requirements of the Commonwealth, and Massachusetts since 1993 has had the highest academic standards among any state in the country, and charters actually can create the curriculum to get to those levels and oftentimes exceed it. They don't think the baseline is good enough. Charter schools have extremely high expectations to ensure kids are prepared for college and to graduate for college. And then the final one within that, besides, charters are extremely mission driven and want to make sure every kid succeeds, just like I do believe all schools want to see kids succeed. Charters have complete autonomy in terms of who and how they hire and fire. So charters are not, there's only one charter school in this Commonwealth that is connected to the teachers union. All their charter schools are not unionized, and so that gives them complete flexibility to identify the best talent to teach their students and to hold them again to the high standards. And again, if that doesn't work out, the teacher is not a good fit, there's a way to let the teacher go, or if the teacher chooses to leave because it's not a good fit. And one part of that that's important to note is most charter schools, if not all, have extended school days and extended years. And so that is what leads to a lot of these gains, is you're seeing these kids in school a lot more hours per year, which again closes a lot of those gaps, especially between poor kids and wealthy kids who have a lot more resources outside of school. So I think a lot of that, again, I think it comes down to what we call autonomy and flexibility, which you don't typically see in a lot of district schools, which have a lot of bureaucracy and they have a lot of rules and regulations as to how teachers are governed and held accountable, as well as students. And again, charters are able to work outside of that system to do just what is best for the kids, and that is most important.
Okay, so we're almost out of time. One
Yeah.
more question for you, though.
Sure.
Your campaign does have Governor Baker's support on it.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is a lot of opposition. 200 public school committees are against you guys. Senator Warren and Markey are against you guys. Why the disconnect for something that should be universally accepted, like educating our kids? And what's your final message for our viewers who may be on the fence about voting yes or no?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. Again, we are very fortunate to have Governor Baker as a huge champion of public education broadly, but specifically right now, looking to make sure this cap is lifted. As he says, every single day there are kids looking out for a better public school, and the skies sometimes rain on them, and we need to give them a shot at the sunlight. And schooling can be that for them, and charter schools for many families are that opportunity. So we're really grateful to have him. Former U.S. Senator Mo Cowan today, a very prominent Democrat, came out and endorsed the Yes on 2 campaign. We have Congressman Stephen Lynch. We have bipartisan support on this campaign. All the major newspapers across the Commonwealth, the Boston Globe, Metro West Daily News, Boston Herald, many others have come out in favor in the recent weeks. And so we do have true support across the Commonwealth. Unfortunately, the No on 2 campaign, as I mentioned earlier, is, they're using some fear tactics to say that, there are people who don't want this. And of course, there's going to be disagreement on both sides of any issue. But what they're really doing with these 200 school committees who have voted against Question 2, almost every single one of them is in a community that will not be affected by Question 2. They currently have a chance to open up charter schools tomorrow if they wanted to, but they're in districts that don't need charter schools currently because their public schools are good. These charter schools, this ballot initiative is really about 9 communities across the state with significant parent demand for better public schools, primarily in urban communities, and those are the families we're fighting for today. So I of course hope that people will follow Governor Baker's lead, as well as the 32,000 voices across the state, and many others who are really hoping that we can finally get over the hump of academic and socioeconomic achievement gaps in this Commonwealth and see charters as a part of the toolkit. They are not a wholesale takeover of public education. They are part of the toolkit that has proved to be very successful for the last 20 years. So I, of course, ask all viewers and all voters, if you have not yet voted during early vote, to please vote yes on 2 on November 8th. And think about, again, there are 32,000 kids who may not have a voice, and they can't wait. Their shot is now, and their parents are hoping for something that I think every parent wants for them, and that is an outstanding education to prepare them for the future. So I thank you for inviting me here today.
Shane, I gotta thank you so much for being here. I think we all learned something really important today about question 2. Before we go, though, I do just want to mention that we did reach out to the No on 2 campaign. Unfortunately, our emails were not responded on time for today's show. That's all the time we have for you here today. Reporting for The Beat, I'm RJ Sheedy. So long, everybody.